Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, hot off of the presses. I'm sure everybody's heard by now. Before I get into that, the show that I normally do every single Thursday night with John from Always Irish, the Always Pigskin Show, is officially canceled for this week. Turns out we both have things we have to do this evening, and we can't do the show. So we'll resume it next week like normal. But again, hot off the presses here, the Big Ten Conference has officially announced that they will be canceling all non-con games this season. Now, there's two different ways you could look at this. First of all, if you're looking for a silver lining here, which I'm always trying to look for a silver lining, the silver lining is they're not planning on canceling football. They're planning on canceling non-conference football. So there's a lot of different ways you could look at this. First of all, the Big Ten and the Big 12 both play 9 conference games. The Big 12 for a different reason. The Big 12 plays 9 conference games because they only have 10 teams in their conference, but the Big 10 plays 9 conference games as a standard, and then they play 3 non-con games. Conferences like the ACC, the SEC only play 8 conference games. The question is, will this cause a domino effect for the rest of the conferences? I think that it will. The reason I think that it will is because, well, you've got all of the Big Ten teams that are scheduled to play non-conference games. That game's going to be wiped off the schedule for the other conference teams. In other words, Ohio State was scheduled to play, I believe, both Virginia Tech and Oregon this year, right? No, maybe it wasn't Ohio State played Virginia Tech. Anyway, they're scheduled to play Oregon week 1. That's off the map. So that leaves a hole in Oregon's schedule automatically. That knocks them down to 11 games. They'd have to go find a team to play if they didn't do the same thing. Essentially, what's going to happen here is it's going to cause so much disarray in the scheduling for a lot of these other teams that are playing a Big Ten team that they are probably going to fall in line and say, we're going to do the same thing. The Big Ten is just the first probably conference to announce that they're doing this. So I think that you'll see all the other 4 power conferences fall in line here sometime within the next week or 2 at the most, and we'll hear about that. Now, how does this affect Clemson? Because that's what I care about the most. If you watched my video last week, I went through a bunch of different scenarios about how a conference-only schedule could hurt Clemson in any postseason talk for obvious reasons, because the ACC is considered to be weak from top to bottom outside of Clemson. If they only played ACC teams, they probably wouldn't have a strength of schedule good enough to be considered for any sort of postseason or playoff play, if they even have a postseason or playoffs. That's a whole nother story. But if they did, that would hurt them. Now, here's the thing, though. We just talked about the Big Ten and the Big 12 having 9 conference games in their schedule. So the ACC only has 8. Now, here's where Notre Dame comes in. This is where it gets interesting because obviously Notre Dame's not in a conference. So if all these other conferences go to conference-only schedules, that leaves Notre Dame with their pants down, doesn't it? Well, the loose affiliation in football that Notre Dame has with the ACC, they're already scheduled to play 6 ACC teams this year. The ACC will need 1 more game to fill out a 9-conference game schedule. Notre Dame will need anybody to play them because they're not in a conference. So this could be good for both the ACC and for Notre Dame, which is probably really a better way of saying, go ahead and join the ACC, Notre Dame. This is your main reason why you should be doing this, for unforeseen pandemic reasons like we have here, right? No, but seriously, so if Clemson's already scheduled to play Notre Dame anyway, it would make sense to leave them on the schedule and play them, and then all the other teams that Notre Dame's scheduled to play, and then add a few more. So this way, it'll help out the ACC with filling out a 9-game schedule. It'll also help out Notre Dame with having a season at all. So this could be mutually beneficial between Notre Dame and the ACC if it were to come down to that situation. And I don't think there's a Notre Dame fan in the world that would rather see them play 9 ACC teams than no teams at all. Because your independence won't get you too far in this sort of situation. If the Pac-12 decides Notre Dame's scheduled to play 2 Pac-12 teams this year. If the Pac-12 says we're only playing conference games, that leaves Notre Dame in the dark, and they'll be scratching for teams from somewhere to play. And the ACC seems to be the only conference out there that would give them the time of day as far as letting them get pushed around by Notre Dame. The ACC loves getting pushed around by Notre Dame. They've been letting him do it for years now. But I don't know. I think that this is good news for all the people that thought that football was going to be canceled altogether. This is great news because we at least know as of today's date, middle of July, that they are planning on playing football. Whereas I saw a lot of people thinking that with football was just going to be canceled altogether. We at least know the Big Ten is planning on it. Now, that could change next week. Okay, so, next week, the Big Ten might come out and say we're not playing at all this year for whatever reason. There may be something that happens between now and then that they make that decision. But right now, I think it's a good sign. I'd rather have a conference-only schedule than a spring schedule. I mean, I want football in the fall. I don't want it in the spring because nobody's going to play in the spring. The best players in college football are not playing in the spring, especially if they're draft eligible because they want to prepare for the draft. They're already bowing out games in December. You think they're not going to bow out games in February or March? Of course they are. So this is good news as far as that goes. Bad news overall, good news, and the fact that I still think we're going to have a football season, and the Big Ten has at least shown some sort of good faith in saying we're playing a non-con schedule instead of canceling football altogether. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on this. Whether you're a Clemson fan or a Big Ten fan or just a college football fan, let me know what you think is going to happen. And we'll talk more about this, much more about this, tomorrow night, Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Pigskin Pete's weekly Friday night call-in show. I'll see you then. Have a great day. Pigskin Pete is checking